and it's all to do with this sort of sustainable world. But not to forget as well the charitable aspect and the whole ethos of the King's Foundation, and that's so important. This is not just something that's going up on the website and just being sold purely to go into someone's pocket. So I think, all in all, I think everyone should have a look at the Highgrove website and see what's on for sale. I mean, there are lots of really lovely, I think pretty fairly priced products. And even more so, go and see the gardens. As we know, King Charles is a keen environmentalist and the gardens are fabulous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 11 o'clock, here with GB News. In a moment, headliners, but first, let's bring you the latest news headlines. And the Prime Minister promised today national renewal after 14 years of what he described as chaos. And MPs debated the King's speech in the House of Commons. King Charles officially opened the new session of Parliament today, setting out the government's planned programme of new laws. In total, 40 separate new pieces of legislation were announced, with promises to get Britain building, deliver greater devolution and a plan to tackle organised immigration crime. The government also announced a new child poverty task force, but the Prime Minister is facing pressure over not scrapping the two-child benefit cap. Sir Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak both set out their intentions as the new session of Parliament began.
And we on this side of the House will hold them accountable for delivering on the commitments that they made to the British people. We will not oppose for the sake of it, but when we disagree with the government, it is our responsibility as the opposition to say so.
This government has been elected to deliver nothing less than national renewal, to stop the chaos of the past 14 years, turn the page on an era of politics as noisy performance, and return it to public service.
The latest economic figures show inflation held at the Bank of England's 2% target last month. That's the lowest rate for 3 years. All eyes now on whether or not the bank will cut interest rates over the coming months. The government says the data is welcome news, but they also said prices are high because of the economic chaos left by the Tories. Prisoners of war were exchanged today following an agreement between Ukraine and Russia. 95 soldiers from each side were returned to their home countries. If you're watching on television, you can see these Ukrainian men appearing emotional as they leave the coach and hug people as they get off, some of them crying as they hit the soil. President Volodymyr Zelensky said all of the freed prisoners were from the armed forces. He also thanked the United Arab Emirates for its help in facilitating the deal. It's the third swap in 7 weeks. And in news here at home, a heat health alert has been issued for parts of England, with temperatures set to hit 30 degrees Celsius on Friday. The UK Health Security Agency alerts cover East Midlands, East England, London and the South East from tomorrow to Saturday. It warns that the expected hot weather may impact the health and social care sector and is encouraging people to check on their elderly neighbours. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Now it's time for Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Joining me tonight to add their unique spin to tomorrow's newspapers are the thinking woman's crumpet, Stephen Allen, and the man who likes crumpets, that's Nick Dixon.
What does that mean?
Well, I think they're calling you fat, aren't they?
But actually, I'm actually slimmer than
unreasonable.
Many of the panellists. I don't know.
Do you like crumpets?
Not really. I haven't eaten them in years.
Do you have like a copy of like a prayer book with butter drips onto the page?
No, it's just a fat joke, but I'm not that fat.
No.
So it doesn't make sense.
Well,
as long as you didn't take it personally.
I am but a conduit for the...
oh, yeah, it's not you. That'll stand up in court.
Let's have a look at Thursday's front pages. I'm willing to take credit for these. How will these new burdens on growth help firms? That's the Daily Mail asking about the King's speech. The Times, PM seeks deal with Europe on migrants. The Express, Red Revolution, bigger state and higher spending. The Financial Times, Starmer promises decade of renewal with bills geared towards unlocking growth. Makes them sound like ducks. The iNews, Avanti first rail firm at risk of privatisation. The Daily Star, terror of the killer stingrays. I don't think that was in the King's speech. Those were the front pages. So, first up, we have the Daily Mail.
Yeah, they go with how will these new burdens on firms help growth? Question mark. They say that Labour's workers' rights revolution will cost jobs and choke growth. This is part of the problem with capitalism, I suppose. If you want to maximise growth, you actually don't want workers to have any rights. You could really do some good stuff then. So it's true to say more rights will impact growth. But it's the sweet spot that we're after as a society.
Is that quite right? Capitalism, some would say its heyday was under Henry Ford's management of the great car plants in Detroit. Part of his calculation was that he had to pay the workers enough that they could afford to buy cars.
Yeah, that's his decision. It's not their right.
Yeah, not a right, but you encourage the workers to have decent standard of living. And then
but if you want to be a business that's massively flexible so that you can hire staff, get rid of staff, 0 hours contracts can be good on both sides, but they're definitely good for the business.
Yes.
I'm just trying,
Are they, though? Because people might work better. They might consider themselves more emotionally involved, more motivated.
If a company thought it's better to not give a 0 hours contract, it wouldn't do. Because they have the right to offer those different contracts.
That is
Labour
true.
is, if you boil it down to rights, but that's like the Daily Mail has just gone on that. They're avoiding some of the other bills. We'll talk conversion therapy later because there's a whole section on that. Of course there is. Have you seen this show before? I think some of the best ones that the King mentioned, he didn't write it himself, but because 40 bills. With the majority that Labour's got, they could get these all through. Worst case scenario, get slowed down by the House of Lords. Maybe that one where they get rid of hereditary peers.
Of the House of Lords,
yeah. They might mention that a few times. But my favourite one is the Budget Responsibility Bill, known as the Liz Truss Bill, where they're making it illegal for anyone to do a Liz Truss again. Imagine that as a legacy. That you're known, you've got a bill named after you because we don't want people to be able to do what you do.
And yet you're still alive. That's quite unusual.
Yeah.
Nick?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Steve says the King doesn't write it. Similar defence to your auto cue-based defence. I hated most of it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about equality, as the Mail's picked up on. There was sort of the creation of fake climate jobs, I'm paraphrasing. There was the scrapping of the no-fault eviction for landlords, which seems a crazy idea to me. Conversion therapy, as you say. Ukraine getting a path to NATO membership also seems dangerous. Resetting relations with European partners means Starmer wants to go back in the EU. Working on a two-state solution in the Middle East, fine, but it's never worked. No hereditary peers, I'm against that. More female bishops in the House of Lords.
You're against the change or you're against hereditary peers?
I'm against the change, yeah.
OK,
I want things to be as traditional and old-fashioned as possible, even though they don't help me at all.
The funny thing is,
they only help the aristocracy.
It is obviously irrational and it's stupid, and possibly it's not the most important legislation, but it has not been bad, has it? It's actually worked quite well. They tend to know to keep quiet unless it's something they know about, like grouse shooting or something.
Yeah. But the idea of, like, your dad or your granddad was really good, so you should get a say in things, it is flawed, isn't it?
It's not the main thing in the speech. I mean, I'd be more worried about almost everything else. I mean, they're getting more female bishops in the House of Lords. Is that important enough to be in the... Oh, why is that? Hate women?
Get rid of all the bishops from the House of Lords. Why do they suddenly get a pass into
That is the odd thing.
I would, but only because they're woke. If they weren't, I'd just make it all bishops. They'd call the House of Bishops.
At one time, the bishops were the most reliable sea anchor against reform and progression that there was, wasn't it? But nowadays, they're less reliable. Obviously, you couldn't reverse engineer the House of Lords, but it's like a constitutional monarchy.
Bishops are very progressive, given they can only move diagonally.
Yeah.
I just thought that. A chess joke, guys, at 5 a.m.
Quite well known, that joke.
Is it?
Yeah. Well,
I take it back.
You're in that joke, but not in the House of Lords. What about the...
I regret my words.
Yes, sorry, what was the other one you said early on? There was one that you went through and...
The two-state solution, resetting relations, no hereditary peers, Ukraine path to NATO membership.
No, it wasn't.
None of these. Climate, no-fault eviction.
No-fault eviction, that was the one. I didn't notice that. So the idea is that landlords can't just throw out tenants?
Yeah, which I think is so bad. I mean, how can that possibly work? You bring someone on knowing that you might be stuck with them forever. Maybe I'm not looking at the detail.
Yeah. But, I mean, to be boring, it's not that you're stuck with them forever. It's for people who want to sell the property, so they'd evict the tenants and sell the property because it's easier to sell with sitting tenants. Whereas now, what you'd have to do is either try and sell it like that or just wait for the contract.
You totally should be allowed to do that because it's your house.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that, although I can imagine that in 6 months' time, with my daughter now living in rented accommodation. Anyway, what's going on?
I've never been a landlord. I'm just objective. The Times has PM seeks deal with Europe on migrants. So good old Keir Starmer, you know, he likes the EU. This is actually a nightmare for people who think Starmer wants to get back into the EU, this piece, because it said he wants to reset Britain's relationship with the EU. Then there's sentences like, Starmer will also seek to opt into the EU fingerprinting system. But as you're reading it, you're just getting incensed.
Carriage of sentence is the wrong bit there, isn't it?
EU, dot.
But it's basically, that Starmer's idea is he'll work with Europe on this. Well, it says they're discussing a potential agreement to allow the UK to send back some small boat migrants in return for accepting a number of asylum seekers from Europe. And a number, I mean, what is the number? That's the key thing, isn't it, really?
Is it more or less than make their way over in dinghies anyway? Yeah, it's got
Is it more or less than 1 million? It's just like a number. So
anyway. Rory Stewart a couple of weeks ago.
Saying 350,000.
That's right, 0.5% of the population on an annual basis. And actually, in a way, when you say 0.5% of the population on an annual basis, it sort of sounds all right, doesn't it?
Sounds
like you should be able to absorb that. But actually, that would, with compound interest, which tends to be a thing that humans do, isn't it? You know.
I've never heard to it referred to that before. But,
Telegraph next.
They go with Starmer unveils his big stake at Britain, of course, but this story down here, Biden says he will quit only if there's a serious medical issue. Can I raise my hand? I think there's one.
There is.
I think there's one already.
But he can't think or talk.
That might be one of it, yeah. I mean, this... Part of me, for a while, I was thinking, well, it doesn't matter now because of what happened with the attempted assassination. It's over and done with. But actually, the more I think about it, that just strengthens the Trump core vote.
Yeah.
And the issue's all about those undecideds, about those swing voters. And surely the biggest problem for those is thinking they can't bring themselves to vote for someone who is not mentally all there to be president, which is a low bar because we all remember the spitting image sketches to do with Reagan.
I don't think there are very many undecideds. What there are people whose motivation to go out and vote, that's always the key. It's the ones who stay at home who don't bother. I do think that seeing Trump come within of his life is likely to be motivating, and I do think that Biden's, collapse and deterioration.
But what I'm saying, sorry, just to finish the thing, I think Biden is going to lose more votes because of that than Trump will win votes because of that.
Yes, that's possible.
There's an argument that although it's a massive boost for Trump, it's a slight boost for Biden. He handled it reasonably well, and also it's just harder to... Is it harder to just oust him at this point, logistically? What do you do? But then again, there's this poll that 65% of Democrats want Biden to withdraw. Only 7% of Democrats think Biden can win versus 72% of Republicans thinking Trump can win. So, obviously everyone wants him gone, except Biden.
Yeah.
Didn't Biden say it'll take God Almighty to get rid of him, which he might actually do at this point?
Maybe a 20-year-old boy on a sloping roof.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, who knows what could happen? You can't really predict anything, obviously, in American politics at the moment. So, obviously, the received wisdom is it's a total Trump win now. Yeah. But anything could happen.
I mean, the polls apparently haven't registered a huge seismic shock. There's maybe half a point of difference, but not massive. It's just a question, as I say, whether people feel motivated to go out. But there is, I mean, he's had a couple of these serious interviews, right? One-on-one interviews recently. One guy said to him, what would happen if that happened again? And Biden said, I don't plan on it happening again. And you think, did you then plan on it happening last time?
It was a bad plan.
Because it was a bad plan. So, oh, God, the level of, I don't know what to call it. Is it ego? Is it narcissism? Is it just vanity? Or is he genuinely deluded as to the state of his deterioration?
There's definitely some ego there, because I think the quote, if it's the interview you're talking about, is where he said, if God Almighty came down, I might think about might. If God's turned up, it's time to stop saying might. Listen to what he's saying.
God is already revolving Trump's head at the crucial moment. I think he's obviously made it.
God's picked,
Exactly. Finally, Nick, we have about 30 seconds to discuss the Daily Star.
Oh, I need far more, because it's about stingrays, terror of the killer stingrays. And the idea is we've got this mega heat wave. I always seem to keep missing these mega heat waves we have, but this 30C heat wave is bringing the stingrays to our beaches.
Wow.
But not the famous puppets, it points out, but the killer
the actual stingrays
beings.
that did for Crocodile Steve, right?
Yeah, great man.
Was it Crocodile Steve? Yeah. I mean, I think I would be a bit... I mean, I live on the Brighton coast.
Well, that's your problem, isn't it?
That would be pretty scary, a stingray.
I live in Hertfordshire. I think I could take it. If it's made it all the way inland to me, I'll win that fight.
Don't go in the sea is a general rule of thumb.
Yeah. Also, a nice picture of Alan Hansen looking well there on the golf course. So that's just encouraging to end with. I always liked Alan. Big lad. That's the front pages, expertly appraised. In part 2, Labour's tentative approach to trans conversion therapy and Taylor Swift single-handedly shaping our economy. We'll find out how in a couple of minutes.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle has reportedly finished filming her new show for Netflix. It aims to celebrate the joys of cooking, gardening, entertaining and friendship.
Yeah, this comes after Prince Harry's Netflix documentary, The Heart of Invictus, failed to hit the right note with viewers missing out on the top 10 in the streaming charts.
So, will this next venture be a success? Well, joining us now is royal commentator Kinsey Schofield.
I know I've talked to the both of you about Meghan Markle potentially running for president, so this feels like a bit of a dud to go from Meghan Markle running for president to Meghan Markle's Netflix series about friendship and cooking. So she's wrapped this recent show. They rented a home near hers in Montecito, so that as their cooking set. And they're saying that this is really make or break for Harry and Meghan when it comes to their Netflix contract.
Do you think, Kinsey, it's fair to say that Meghan Markle has proved to be commercially a bit of a damp squib? Even in America, her native homeland, she's kind of Oprah without the audience when it comes to the cooking. Also, is she kind of, do you think... They saw her as the golden ticket, didn't they, to unlimited revenue, unlimited audiences, and it just hasn't happened.
Look, I think Meghan is a beautiful woman, and I do think she's talented, but I think how you treat people is incredibly important. And not only was she rumored to have been cruel inside Kensington Palace with several bullying allegations, but here in the States, Archwell Productions, their audio section, their scripted section, they've gone through several employees. And I think it's a reflection on the way that people are treated there. And I think as a viewer, you might get that. You might feel that way, and maybe that is where the appeal has been lost.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. So, Steve, Thursday's Daily Mail, among the chaff of the King's speech, this maybe feels significant.
Yeah, this is the stickier wicket. Labour reveals plan to ban trans conversion therapy abuse. It's like there's double negatives already in the King's speech to allow people to explore their sexual orientation and gender identity. So, the phrase that they use in this article is they want a draft bill, important. It's not just a bill anymore. They want a draft bill. They're messing around some of these ideas, which would block action to change, cure or suppress, which feels like the weakest one on here, someone's sexuality or gender ID. So it's going to come down to definitions. How do you define someone suppressing someone's sexuality or gender identity?
Yeah.
Whether that would allow people to have a discussion, a challenging discussion. It does say...
Because, the gay conversion therapy from years ago, which most I suppose there is a consensus has been reached that there is something slightly off about that.
Yes, when you say... this is the problem with this story. When you say conversion therapy, you imagine I will pray away the evil spirits.
Pray away the gay. Yeah.
And that's, in general, considered to be a bad thing.
Yeah.
Although, do you know, I was looking online on Wikipedia, it doesn't list this nation as having that as with a specific law against it.
Right.
Only as one pending, so I didn't have time to go through
I think it was a bigger thing in America, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There was quite a lot of it.
And there's loads of countries that actually have banned it, but they say we're down as pending, and that might be why this bill... There's pressure for it to go through, but what they're bringing with it is the gender ID stuff.
Yeah.
Now, they do list a legitimate psychological support, treatment, or non-directive counselling. The big worry is that even talking therapy would be included as conversion. It looks like that would mean talking therapy isn't, but what's the non-directive counselling?
So is anything that isn't absolutely affirmative, like affirming the patient's preference, belief, delusion, whatever you want to call it.
Because directive counselling, telling them what to do, it's both sides of this, isn't it? You're saying that surely that would also mean affirming is too strong.
Yes.
Disagreeing is too strong.
Because obviously I do understand that, I accept that gender identity and sexual orientation not necessarily the same thing, but if you have a young person who is expressing confusion, they often express confusion about both of those together.
Yeah.
And in order to legitimise one aspect of it, you might have to suppress one of the others, right?
It's going to come down to definitions, of all of these words. And the worry is if you don't phrase it well, you've got a law that bans something that shouldn't be banned.
Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've covered it well, the misleading fact that it's called conversion therapy. It's really just about speaking to kids and saying, you sure you want to do this irreversible, crazy thing? So...
I don't think that'd be allowed under...
no, that's my paraphrase. But I do think Labour are conflicted on this. But I think what's happening is they've got the sort of mad former view on it, but they're kind of moving to the Blairite view. He's said, a man is a man, a woman is a woman. Wes Streeting has said, upheld the puberty blockers ban, but they've still got the Annalise Dodds, Zara Sultana mad element of the party they haven't quite quashed yet. But I feel like maybe they will. Even The Guardian admits this will be knotty, this bill. So I think, I think maybe they gradually kick it into the long grass. I don't know. But it was in the King's speech, so that's a bit weird. I don't know.
One swallow, Nick, does not make a summer, but according to The Independent, a single Swift has broken our economy.
Yeah, there is that. So Taylor Swift effect stops inflation dropping below 2% as calls grow for rate cuts. So Taylor Swift is messing up our entire economy. So the popularity of Taylor Swift's recent tour of the UK has had a butterfly effect on the UK economy, helping push up the price of hotel stays and in turn keeping inflation at 2%. So we're hoping it's going to come down. Borrowers want it to be lower. Meanwhile, Taylor Swift is messing with it, and she has some very good songs, but the obvious answer is ban her from the country. I mean, for the economy.
A good friend of mine took my daughter to see it, and they both said it was amazing. And my mate I've been to see Springsteen with on a few occasions said it is very like a Springsteen. She is the new Springsteen. She's misrepresented as a sort of feminist icon. It's actually a massive feel-good kind of rally vibe.
She's not the new Springsteen, except maybe in her politics, but she's good at what she does.
But anyway, that's slided to one side.
She's destroying our economy.
It's not really the butterfly effect, is it? It's a major effect. I mean, it's a single
cause and effect.
Origin of a substantive effect on hotel prices.
Yeah.
Although I would say, as a touring comedian, I've been very struck by how high hotel prices have been since the end of COVID. They just don't seem to have gone down, and I do not understand why or how. And my wife says, well, they're trying to claw back the money they lost during COVID. Well, we'd all like to do that. If it was just a question of putting your price up, I would have done that too. But if I put my price up, people don't pay it. So
I hate to poo-poo, but this whole
article... You love to poo-poo. It's your whole thing.
Mainly, it's a fibre thing. There's no actual evidence in here that says Taylor Swift caused it. You can call it butterfly effect.
What part of a picture of Taylor Swift on the front cover of the magazine?
How do we get a boring story about inflation to be interesting? Blame it all on Taylor Swift? I did listen to her double album. I downloaded it just because I do a radio show in the afternoons. I wanted to know about it. I was struck by how many breakups she's been through, and none of them were her fault. No. Statistically, that's impressive.
And every single sweater that she has, I think she must have about 3 wardrobes full of left items of clothing. Every single boyfriend leaves a scarf.
Although she said she'd hit a new sort of level in her songwriting, where she wrote a breakup song that was entirely fictitious, so she didn't have to actually go through it. So now she can just churn them out.
That's fabulous. She's moved beyond. She's just transcended. The Independent now, Nick. Good news for anyone, or possibly bad news. I didn't really understand the story, but anyone who wants to travel to Europe, I don't know what the point of that would be now, anyway.
Well, I glazed over a bit because I don't leave the country, famously. So it's EU to water down Brexit travel checks for British passengers as new border plan delayed again. So the EU were going to do these stringent post-Brexit checks on holidaymakers, which would lead to these massive delays. But now they're not really going to do it until November as a last resort. I've completely made this up, but I think it's because Starmer's in, and then he's got this nice relationship with the EU now, so we'll wait on this thing, but it probably isn't that.
No, I just think it's an IT thing. They can't get the tech working in time. And the headline, this is The Independent, so it shouldn't be the most ranty headline, but it is. They're making it all about us. This is not. This is an EU issue to do with third-party countries.
Right.
And we are one.
Yes.
So what do you expect to happen? We get some sort of special treatment just because?
So The Independent is ranting against the cruelty of the EU as if we're being punished.
Well, I mean, they're making it more of an interesting story by reselling it like that. But it's not. It's just the rule for third-party countries. We are one now, but it's all facial scans and stuff. The tech, we can't even get printers to work as a society.
No,
so
that's
this is
true.
never going to work.
I saw the term travel checks and immediately just remembered my old American Express ones. I still have one worth 10 quid from 1987. Souvenirs. Good news, Steve, for people who actually want to get anywhere in Wales as well.
Fantastic news. Joy in Wales as 20-mile-an-hour blanket speed limit is scrapped after £32 million spent on it. A year of anger. Welsh Government's biggest ever petition was signed by, now, forget the number of people who signed it, signed by the family of the minister who championed the policy. That is shocking until you realise it's quite easy to get your wife, in-laws and teenage kids to hate you.
Yeah.
So, actually, that's not that much of a flip.
Well, especially if they're having to drive at 20 miles per hour. I mean, certain laws, have a sort of nebulous distance effect, don't they? But
yeah, you feel that one. Well, I think you feel that because our roads aren't built for it and our cars aren't built for it. And there's the rule is something like 10% tolerance, which is 2 miles an hour tolerance if you're going through a speed limit. Yeah. If you're going at 70, you can get up to 77 accidentally, and that's fine.
No, it's
but
terrifying.
You've just got to watch the
I drive home, not home, but to where I stay in London after midnight, obviously after this show, empty roads, what's it called, the Fulham Palace Road is one. And it's just ridiculous. You feel like you're stalking. So there's somebody walking down the road and you feel like you're about to jump out.
It is too slow.
You get arrested for curb crawling.
That's right. It's like there's a real sweet spot between that and curb crawling.
There's a speed camera.
The David Pleat effect.
There's a speed camera near to where I live because there's a school there. It's a 20-mile-an-hour zone. And it's the bottom of a hill. So whenever I go cycling, I enjoy setting that thing off at 22 miles an hour. Whereas cars would...
And then slamming into a child crossing the road.
Oh, wait, I'm a cyclist. There's no car.
I wouldn't mind at all if they had timing cameras that operated during school hours. I mean, I think that would be reasonable. But these Welsh ones were even on the country roads as well, right?
It's an absolute and that's a nightmare. It's especially a nightmare in my Lambo. It's just not meant to go that slow. But yeah, everyone hates this. Even the taxi drivers. Our law isn't as extensive as Wales, but every taxi driver I speak to hates the law here. Yeah. It's not workable. The only thing I might be open to is a complete removal of cars. Because I was reading Peter Hitchens' book, The Cameron Delusion, and he has this very poetic passage on why we should never have brought in the motor car. And I started thinking, you know what? He's absolutely right. Yeah. But I can't go for this safetyism thing or this climate emissions thing, which is the reason they cite. But I can go for sort of total reversal going back in time.
I remember seeing traffic plans for removing cars entirely from they've sort of done it around Trafalgar Square, for instance. It would be possible. But it very rarely works. It really becomes that kind of Barcelona vibe, does it, in London? When you get rid of cars. Instead, what you just get is a load of vagrants
and pigeons
milling about. But we've got some of the safest roads in Europe. We've got some of the best tech in our cars these days. You would imagine cars would get quicker. Yeah. They're not. There was no episode of Tomorrow's World where they did 4 miles an hour. No. Why are we going this way?
Well, it's entirely hostility, isn't it? They're making it a hostile environment.
Idiocracy.
We are at the halfway point. In 2 minutes' time, we move on to Musk's migration, the end of DEI, and the latest on Sloopgate. We will see in a couple of minutes.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Good evening to you. Tomorrow, fine with sunny spells and a bit warmer than today across most of England and Wales. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, things will be a little different. There's high pressure sitting across England and Wales Low pressure and weather fronts just eking in from the west, springing cloud and patchy rain at the moment across western Scotland and Northern Ireland, but that rain's going to pep up overnight. It could turn heavy for a time across the west of Northern Ireland and along the west coast of Scotland. A few showers for North Wales maybe, but for most of England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland, a dry night. Quite a warm night. Temperatures holding up in some towns and cities at 15 or 16 degrees. On to Thursday, and a dull, damp start, certainly for Northern Ireland and western Scotland. But in the south, mostly fine. Could be some morning fog patches around. They may take a couple of hours to clear away, but generally plenty of sunshine across the south. A bit more cloud in West Wales, northwest England, 1 or 2 showers here, and a dull, damp morning for Northern Ireland. And a good part of Scotland seeing cloud and outbreaks of rain. Maybe parts of the east coast escaping largely dry, but even here a few showers may drift up as we go through the morning. So it's a bit of a north-south split with the weather, certainly to start with. I'm hopeful that parts of southern and eastern Scotland will actually turn a bit drier through the morning and stay largely fine. Some brighter skies likely to develop across the Murray coast through the afternoon. Northern Ireland, western Scotland do stay pretty dull and damp. Most of England and Wales seeing plenty of hazy and pretty warm sunshine. 28 in the capital, many places in the mid-20s across the south. By Friday, that heat could build further. We may reach 30 Celsius across the southeast in the sunshine. Again, quite a bit of cloud at times for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but generally a drier day for Northern Ireland. It'll be late in the day before this rain starts to creep in. 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but most places set fair. And as I said, hotter still with maybe 30 Celsius in the southeast.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. Next, straight into big news from California. In The Independent, Elon Musk has been Tesla'd beyond endurance.
Yes, well, we've just had big news that apparently Biden has COVID. He's tested positive, so we wanted to get that in there just to show we're aware of that. But let's also do this Musk story. So it's many will follow. Elon Musk predicts mass exodus from California. So, yeah, I don't know if you saw this. This was great. Basically, there's this ludicrous rule that means that schools can just do what they want with your child and suggest that they change gender and they don't have to tell the parents. And Musk has basically said if this happens, he's actually said this is the final straw. Because of this law and the many others that preceded it, attacking both families and companies, SpaceX will now move its HQ from Hawthorne, California to Starbase, Texas. And in a follow-up post, he said, I did make it clear to Governor Newsom about a year ago that laws of this nature would force families and companies to leave California to protect their children. And there's also been a funny sort of thing where Newsom, in reference to a previous meeting Musk had with Trump, says, you bent the knee. And Musk said to him, you never get off your knees. So that's an exchange that came off the back of it. So, yeah. And I see Musk's point, people are going to move to Texas especially because Texas doesn't have income tax. I mean, how mad is that? What a place, just a paradise.
There's an awful lot. There's 2 big things going on lately. I mean, for some time now, people like Joe Rogan, of course, moved from California to Texas. Texas seems to get them all, and I'm assuming that it is the tax regime.
Yeah, I think that's...
The sales taxes.
The sales
of the money,
taxes
instead.
And he might have been waiting for a sort of moral stand that he could take.
No, but I do think it's genuine, Musk, because he also had his son, who was, became his daughter, this Vivian Henna Wilson, who said, I no longer wish to have anything to do with Musk in any way. So obviously it's a personal thing as well for him. Yeah.
But also quite a lot of tech bros coming out for Trump lately as well, right? Or swinging against Newsom in particular. And that's quite significant because I think most people felt in the 2020 election, to the extent that there was shenanigans going on. An awful lot of that came out of Silicon Valley rather than the traditional media.
Yeah. Peter Thiel's obviously big on Trump. There's a whole list now, as you say, of donors, and Bill Ackman's come across. And
interesting, isn't it? I don't know whether that's about the policies or
there's a tax bit in there as well, I'd imagine. Yeah. Honestly, because I've not read up loads about Elon Musk, I didn't know that he had a trans child. I mean, there was a couple of things when I read this article. Firstly, he's got so many kids. I suppose it's difficult to keep track of them all.
Yeah.
The idea that his latest one that he used, the weird name with the A and the E. Maybe that's just because that's the kind of name that you don't ever need to worry about changing. But to read this, that this child doesn't want anything to do with her dad. That's the richest person in the world.
Yeah, but that's
Stay
the weird
touch.
thing, isn't it? That there's quite a lot of very wealthy celebrities, in California in particular, who have trans children now, or non-binary, or special in some way.
Something in the water.
And, well, I think it's some kind of weird reaction to the level of celebrity that the parents have, isn't it? We all know that they're, girls with daddy issues or whatever. There's always that kind of... But they seem to just...
No, it's...
I don't know.
Surely the most obvious explanation is it's a status thing for the parents. Yeah. And they're sending them to these radical schools, which tend to be in places like California. This was this Crossroads school, which Musk blames the case of his son.
Yeah.
I mean, you're laughing at the name Crossroads.
Yeah.
It's in the name, isn't it? It's right
the
there.
wobbly walls. I think there's something weird going on, but I don't think we're disputing it. It's just... you're right. It's status, or it's the new kind of rebellion, right? But they're just not comfortable with just kind of going, yeah, it's great, I'm rich, it's
I'd
great
stay
to be
in the
king.
will, though. Do you know what I mean? I'd stay at least in touch enough to be in the will.
This is not disconnected, Steve, in the Telegraph. Further evidence that diversity, equity and inclusion is in ICU, if not actually DEAD.
Yeah, it's going the way of Windows Vista. Microsoft decides diversity no longer business critical, claims sacked manager. That's important. The tech giant says it's committed to promoting equality and inclusion, and that remains unchanged. But part of this will be whoever's just been sacked throwing some stones.
Yeah.
But actually, if you actually are really key on having all of this diversity, equity and inclusion, you don't need some special department to do it. If it's that core to you, you do it automatically. In fact, having a special department just means there are more people to hire, and you've got to worry who you're doing it. One sack manager sent an email saying that how the attitudes have changed. It's a trend.
But is there not an actual substantive? Are they not closing a department?
No, well, they've got rid of 4 of these managers.
Right, OK.
And this is the trend that you're seeing in this kind of sector of thinking that it's not worth spending the money. Part of it, look, even if you think this diversity is a key goal for Microsoft, loads of these businesses were also doing it to be seen to be doing it.
Yeah.
And now they've realised maybe it's not going to impact sales, so we don't need to show as much. Zoom recently told staff earlier the year that they dismantled their DEI team, and it's Zoom, so there's no way they were told in the office, were they? That would have been just stay at home, why don't you? It's a trend, and it's... At the very least, we know the showy part of it is disappearing.
Yeah, that's what it is. It was a fad, and so, you were prepared to take a hit financially and say, hey, look at us, and maybe you got all sorts of funding from it. Now that's gone, then they're just getting rid of it. I mean, Meta and Tesla next dropping their DEI teams by 50% or more. It's just fading away. Everyone's realising we don't need to do this rubbish anymore. Even Tractor Supply and then John Deere both came out saying we're not doing DEI anymore, pretty much. So agricultural vehicles are done with woke. So it's gone.
Although they've quietly moved all the jobs to Mexico while all the fuss was being created out there on the top. I don't know. I have a feeling that that's something like... John Deere has been a source of quite a lot of anger on the right, I think.
Yeah.
And the ones that have, the programmed tractors, so you're effectively... You don't own your tractor anymore.
It's a Bud Light thing. They're meant to be on our team, and they're doing all woke stuff, but they're made tractors for Trump or something. Yeah. And a lot of it came from George Floyd. I'm amazed that Telegraph is still saying the murder of George Floyd. That's very much disputed, I think, but don't want to get into that now.
Well, I don't know that it's... I mean, it might be disputed
by the coroners,
but it was found to be murder.
Yeah,
so
fair enough.
I know what you mean. Independent now, Nick, some pretty damning evidence that too many men are wasting their lives.
Yeah, men still outnumber women in reality TV production roles, new research finds. So this comes from Banijay Entertainment, Every Woman Studios, and, wait for it, the Gina Davis Institute on Gender in Media.
Oh, my God.
That is a thing. I learned tonight.
That's what you would have made up, but it's...
She was in that baseball movie about the women playing baseball during the war.
And that's where it started.
That's where the little...
That's where the rot set in.
Own. I bet it was called that for a while.
I mean, so look, it's women are outnumbered in reality TV, and that's got to stop. Everything has to be completely equal forever. Total communism now. So I don't know. I mean, there's this report, behind the scenes, women's representation in unscripted television in the US, UK, Brazil and France. Why is that a report? Who is doing this work and why? Do we not have to be equally represented in everything? Do we? I mean, apparently we do.
But
so I'm
you've seen the percentage, though. So I was listening to this thinking, I take the direction they're going in. Give me the stats. So they found, according to the men outnumber women 58.4%. Oh, that 8.4% is...
It's not horrible, is it?
No, and
it's less than the number by which women outnumber men in universities.
Although,
instance,
Steve,
you know.
in America, only 16% of the roles are filled by women. So that's a terrible... So it's a terrible thing.
Filling roles? What, you mean like in catering?
How dare you? I think one theory is the women are actually getting the cool fictional roles. They can still get hired as like actors in films and TV. It's like reality TV. It's not exactly the highest status, is it? I like it, but, you know...
If we could solve this by getting rid of some reality TV shows, I'm on board with that. That's a DEI thing.
But not The Apprentice. That should come
Check
back.
my bio. Steve, Slopegate update now in the Times.
Secret Service investigated after blaming shooting lapses on health and safety. This is so good. Again, I've written comedy for ages. If I ever wrote this, they'd think this is ridiculous. So Kimberly Cheetle, the director of the Secret Service, had apparently decided not to guard the position on the roof because it's sloped, you know, like roofs. And that could pose a risk to the safety of officers. Is there anything else that might pose a risk to the safety of the officers, like someone shooting in the general direction of where the officers are?
Apart from which, the place where they did take up a position was more sloped than that roof anyway. I mean, it's a lie. It's an outright lie. There are two things going on here. One, there's the eminently, you know, comic-rich environment of the slope roof, healthy safety. Yeah. But slightly more concerningly, there's a sort of second-order effect of just disbelief and suspicion, isn't there?
Yeah, because as you say, if it's not a lie, why would you say it? Because you're either going to look ridiculously incompetent or you're lying. They're the only choices, really, aren't they? I mean, they checked the building from inside. It's like...
And it wasn't like she panicked on the day or something. This was the interview was a couple of days later. She's had plenty of time to think her story through.
Yeah, very disturbing and odd. But it could just be massive. I wouldn't rule out these days just massive incompetence. One thing they point out, they say, well, look, it's not women's fault because in the past there were assassinations of US leaders before women routinely served on security details. You could cite that. You wouldn't really want to cite JFK, though, because that's so obviously dodgy inside job. I wouldn't cite that one, but maybe Reagan or something. But
I don't necessarily have a problem with the woman directing the operation, although this particular woman certainly seems to have made an absolute pig's ear of it. But seeing some of the women, for instance, literally trying to put their physical body in between Trump and not coming up to his chin, you know, that's problematic, isn't it?
She should have gone into reality television, solved two problems at once. I'm just thinking out loud here, guys.
But I cannot work out a scenario where there's any plausible malice. I mean, as you say, it's one of those razors, isn't it? There are a number of razors you're supposed to use in these things, and one of them is like never ascribe to malice, that which can be explained by incompetence.
Just to be clear, you mean Occam's razor? You're not talking about...
Occam's razor is another one. No, there's another razor. That's not... I think Occam's razor is you use the parsimonious explanation, the one that requires the least unlikely. Anyway, the point is, I have genuinely been trying to work out what could, if you wanted to believe a conspiracy theory, what is the only... I cannot see one, unless they just created an environment into which there was a space for an assassin to...
Oh, yeah, that's the obvious one, to take out...
Yeah, but they would have just had to kind of go... There's a roof there if anyone wants to. It would have still been like they couldn't possibly have recruited this kid, right?
Well, the kid could have been trained up if you want to go there by one of these sort of
I'm
over time, and then they allowed it.
Candidate as you can, but still, how do you get a kid to go there on a roof and then go? Obviously,
you brainwash him over time.
We will be blowing your
Send him
brains
to
out.
one of these California schools that Elon Musk kid went to, and then
coming up with some kind of conspiracy way of doing it. You come up with a better one than I'm not going up there, not with my bad back.
No,
exactly. You know what I mean? This is such a bad plan, but this is more likely to be they weren't doing the job very well. No. Loads of roofs were left unprotected.
Right.
But it's only whenever you get a shooter on the roof that you notice. There must have been.
But they noticed for 2 minutes, right? You must have seen. Seen the split.
There's also this thing that the scope thing he had, the hunting scope. Yeah. That was known for like hours to see. My question is.
And he carried a fully extended ladder all the way to the building. It wasn't a ladder that you can collapse.
I know, and only builders do that. My question is, there's been so much incompetence. I'm amazed that someone even shot him back. Do you know what I mean? At that point, someone went, "Oh, I better actually do it." Then, you know what I mean? I'm surprised.
Well, that's the bit at when,
which is good.
I guess it's good, but at that point you go, "Well, actually, he's done it now. It might have been useful to, I don't know, take him alive and subject him to."
Interrogation. Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
You always cut off the
He was going to slide off that roof at any time.
Just
all loose
the final
ends.
section to go. We have an army beasting, the latest longevity news in mice, and the eggs and the single girl. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
A new report suggests that Prince Harry is lonely in California and he's considering returning to Britain despite a seismic falling out with his father and his brother.
But the question we're asking this morning is whether Meghan would come with her Prince Charming or whether Harry would perhaps be more welcome here if he came solo.
Like Kinsey, we'll go to Kinsey Schofield live now in LA. Kinsey, we've got lots of time to talk about this and speculate this. We've got about 6 minutes or so to talk. But what's behind all of this? Where are these thoughts coming from?
They're coming from royal author Hugo Vickers, and I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Vickers, but he's written over 30 books about the British royal family. And he told The Sun that Prince Harry will ultimately return to the UK with his tail between his legs. He described the Duke of Sussex as angry and says Harry is genuinely petrified of losing his wife, Meghan Markle. When asked his predictions for where Harry and Meghan will be in the next 20 years, Vickers told The Sun, "I think he'll come home," explaining, "I think Harry will come home, and if he comes home, we must be very nice to him because he won't particularly want to. He's quite angry," suggesting that he would be coming home solo. Vickers also said that Prince Harry looks slightly petrified of Meghan Markle and that King Charles has left the door wide open for Harry's return if and when he does decide to come back.
I can only imagine the culture shock that Prince Harry has faced arriving there. This is a kid that has grown up in castles.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back for the final section of Headliners. Let's kick off with the time, Steve. Some good old-fashioned beasting has been caught on camera, and it looks rather beastly.
Yep, army instructor who made trainee do press-ups in puddle investigated. There's a video that shows the officer bent down, yelling in the face of a trainee. Someone's been watching too many films, is your first take on this, but the Ministry of Defence has investigated it. It took place at the Army's Infantry Training Centre in Catterick, where recruits are paid 18 grand for 28 weeks training. Just think of the money. I've done gigs where you're being heckled and all you do is mentally just think, I'm getting paid way more than you. So I think the thing is...
Yeah, but 18 grand is not enough to get humiliated like that. Yeah, it's not bad maybe for an infantry just starting out, school leaver or whatever, but it's certainly not... It's not being shouted at and belittled and humiliated money.
Some of the things, there was a lot of use of the C word, but I watch episodes of The Boys, so I'm used to that these days. Why are you giving me that beep attitude? Stop eyeballing me or I'll punch your head in. I mean, it's not great, it's not professional.
Well, it is, as you say, it's classic officer and a gentleman or even Animal House, isn't it? Drop and give me 20.
Think of the money, that's what I'd do.
Think of the big gun. I think that's probably it.
Well, they're not actually going to shoot you or punch your face.
No, when you get out through the training, they'll give you something, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know, Nick. I don't know. I've never been in the armed services or anything like that, but I know a few people who have, and they believe that this is an important part of their...
You seem like you should have. It feels like you should have been in the RAF. Maybe it's just the moustache. Well... Yeah, I thought this was what the army was. Maybe I misread this. I thought it's what it was about. Shouting at people, calling them maggots. Isn't that what it's all about? You
ladies.
Break them. and you break their will, and then they learn to respect authority.
Yeah, you've got to beat them down until they're mush, and then you can sort of
rebuild them. Classic brainwashing.
Yeah.
It's what happened to that kid. It's what happened to the kid that shot Thomas. It's classic. You break them. MK Ultra. I'm just saying things now.
At least where we framed it as this is a conspiracy theory chat, whereas you just went the guy who shot Trump. Like it's a true fact.
What about the rest of the platoon? I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Was this guy particularly lippy or lazy, or did he force this side, or is this just something the guy picks out? This is
going to be on the officer, isn't it? Not the.
Did they need to order the code red?
Yeah, you can't handle the truth. Classic longevity study. Now, Nick, in the Telegraph, this is very exciting news for anyone who's anxious about losing a much-loved family mouse.
Yes, scientists discover anti-aging holy grail that can stop cancer and grey hair in its tracks. But unfortunately, it's in mice. It's always in these blooming mice. They're just living high on the hog, aren't they?
They get great health care and they don't even pay into it.
They're going to end up living forever. Humans will be dying off, but mice, shorter and shorter lives because our society collapses. Mice just living forever. Anyway, it's interleukin 11, perhaps, which is this gene, and it's thought to be largely redundant in humans, but now it might be the key to solving aging, because in these mice, it's reduced muscle wasting, improvement in muscle strength, all the usual signs of aging. So we might have cracked it, basically, but currently only in mice.
25% would be quite good, though, wouldn't it? That's about right. You don't want to live forever, but an extra 20 years.
I think you do,
quite nice,
but as long as you're not in pain.
Not everybody.
Pension would
I don't want everybody living forever.
Oh, good point.
Maybe, but
not some of these lefties. Yeah, I know what you mean.
You're not the present generation.
I would like to have the option to live forever, and to because I thought about it. I wouldn't want to just have to live forever. Like society's just a wasteland. Everyone's died out, and you're just there on a kind of rock. I'm not sure I'd want to do that.
Yeah, you're right. The taboo against self-slaughter would have to be eased up somewhat, wouldn't it? I think.
Yeah.
What do you think, Steve? You're a science guy. It is always in mice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always in mice, and
isn't there a whole book on that, or a website or something called In Mice? I think so.
The one with the ear on its back is the best picture. Isn't it? I mean, I don't want to speak badly of him because he could definitely hear me. That's the problem. But no,
Steve, if you thought that last piece of research might be of limited value, wait till you get a load of karaoke blushing.
Let it glow. Blushing is a gut reaction to your own karaoke. Scientists prove, for some reason, by forcing teenage girls to watch videos of themselves. So researchers got some teens, made them sing karaoke, filmed it, played it back to them and filmed their response. Wow. These are a bunch of perverts. Yeah. That's what's happening. There's no reason to do this research other than, I like watching embarrassed girls. And they sang Hello by Adele, Let It Go from Frozen, All I Want for Christmas Is You, that's a banger, and All the Things She Said by Tattoo, picked because they're difficult. I don't know, I think I do a pretty good tattoo. And they all got embarrassed. The only important thing is that it seems from the area of the brain that's active is the blushing isn't caused by other people seeing how bad you are. Yeah. It's self-awareness, you realising that you're bad.
That's shame, isn't it, as it used to be called. I think this distinction has been drawn for some hundreds of years, isn't it? But, yeah, I think there is something about hearing your own voice, of course. Not many people do that as frequently as we do, any of us in broadcasting or whatever. You get used to it after a while, but the first few times you hear your own voice, it's not what you think of at all, is it?
I'm OK with the voice, not the face, though. I don't like seeing myself on telly. By the way, would the mouse with its ear on its back be a perfect target for assassination? That's what I'm worrying about now, because it's all ear.
Decoy, isn't it? From now on, there are going to be loads of those mice everywhere at every speech.
And you've got 30 seconds now. Steve, we've dropped a story, I'm afraid, Nick, so I'm sorry about that.
Oh, I've got it.
The Chinese egg lady. So can you do this one for me from The Sun as if I'm a 59-year-old dad?
Yeah, I could do it in 10 seconds. Tinder finds your hottest selfies by using AI face scanning. This will maximise the upset and disappointment when you actually turn up on the date. They pick the ones that make you look the best. Why?
Okay,
you want a picture that makes you look terrible, so you turn up and they're like, oh, very good.
No, you want to get past the first hurdle.
Yeah.
No, it set the bar low. This is like scams.
But you don't want to, what is it called, fish eye them or something?
Catfish.
Catfish, yeah. You don't want to do that.
I like you pretending you don't know what
What you want is to look friendly, rugged, but not necessarily handsome. You want to go for that kind of, you know.
Is that what you went with that tash?
The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Thursday's front pages. Daily Mail, how will these new burdens on growth help firms? The Times, PM seeks deal with Europe on migrants. The Express, Red Revolution, bigger state and higher spending. Financial Times, Starmer promises decade of renewal with bills geared towards unlocking growth. iNews, Avanti, first rail firm at risk of privatisation. The Daily Star, terror of the killer Stingrays. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Stephen Allen and Nick Dixon. Nick is going to be back hosting tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Josh Howie and Paul Cox. If you've been watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, thank you very much for your company. I wish you a peaceful night. Good night.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News. That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Good evening to you. Tomorrow, fine with sunny spells and a bit warmer than today across most of England and Wales. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, things will be a little different. There's high pressure sitting across England and Wales. Low pressure and weather fronts just eking in from the west, bringing cloud and patchy rain at the moment across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. But that rain's going to pep up overnight. It could turn heavy for a time across the west of Northern Ireland and along the west coast of Scotland. A few showers for North Wales maybe, but for most of England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland, a dry night. Quite a warm night. Temperatures holding up in some towns and cities at 15 or 16 degrees. On to Thursday, and a dull, damp start, certainly for Northern Ireland and western Scotland. But in the south, mostly fine. Could be some morning fog patches around. They may take a couple of hours to clear away, but generally plenty of sunshine across the south. A bit more cloud in West Wales, northwest England, 1 or 2 showers here, and a dull, damp morning for Northern Ireland. And a good part of Scotland seeing cloud and outbreaks of rain. Maybe parts of the east coast escaping largely dry, but even here a few showers may drift up as we go through the morning. So it's a bit of a north-south split with the weather, certainly to start with. I'm hopeful that parts of southern and eastern Scotland will actually turn a bit drier through the morning and stay largely fine. Some brighter skies likely to develop across the Murray coast through the afternoon. Northern Ireland, western Scotland do stay pretty dull and damp. Most of England and Wales seeing plenty of hazy and pretty warm sunshine. 28 in the capital, many places in the mid-20s across the south. By Friday, that heat could build further. We may reach 30 Celsius across the southeast in the sunshine. Again, quite a bit of cloud at times for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but generally a drier day for Northern Ireland. It'll be late in the day before this rain starts to creep in. 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but most places set fair. As